a version of Tale by VIVOBOOX.
What if the one person you trusted most led you straight into the arms of danger? This is the story of Blondine, and nothing is as it seems.
Blondine lost. Blondine grew to be 7 years old, and Brunette 3. The king had gifted Blondine a delightful little carriage pulled by ostriches, along with a young coachman who was 10 years old, who was the nephew of her nurse. The little boy, who was called Gourmandine, loved Blondine tenderly. He had been her playmate from her birth, and she had shown him 1,000 acts of kindness. But Gourmandine had one terrible fault. He was a lover of food, was so fond of tasty morsel and sweet things that for a paper of bonbons he would commit almost any wicked action. Blondine often said to him, "I love you dearly, Gourmandine, but I do not love to see you so greedy. I beg you to correct this villainous fault, which will make you hated by all the world." Gourmandine kissed her hand and promised to reform, but unfortunately he continued to steal cakes from the kitchen and bonbons from the storeroom. Often, indeed, he was punished with a whipping for his disobedience and gluttony. The Queen Forbette heard from all sides the criticisms aimed at the boy, and she was clever enough to think that she might make use of this weakness of Gourmandine and thus get rid of poor Blondine. The garden in which Blondine drove in her little carriage, drawn by ostriches and guided by her little coachman, Gourmandine, was separated by a barrier from an enormous and splendid forest known as the Forest of Lilacs, because its lilac trees were always adorned with magnificent flowers throughout the year. No one, however, entered these woods. It was well known that it was enchanted ground, and that if you once entered there, you could never hope to escape. Gourmandine knew the terrible secret of this forest. He had been severely forbidden to ever take Blondine's carriage in that direction, to prevent Blondine from accidentally passing through the barrier and stepping onto the enchanted ground. Many times, King Benin had considered building a wall along the entire length of the barrier to secure it in some way so as to make an entrance there impossible. But as soon as the workers laid the foundation, some unknown and invisible force lifted the stones, causing them disappeared from sight. The Queen Forbette now made great efforts to gain the friendship of Gourmandine by giving him every day some tasty sweets. In this way, she made him so complete a slave to his appetite that he could not live without the jellies, bonbons, and cakes which she gave him. At last, she sent for him to come to her and said, "Gourmandine, it depends entirely upon yourself whether you shall have a large box full of bonbons and delicious sweets, or never again eat one during your life." "Never again eat one? Oh, madame, I should die of such punishment." "Speak, madame, what must I do to escape this terrible fate?" "It is necessary," said the queen, looking at him fixedly, "that you should drive the Princess Blondine near to the Forest of Lilacs."
"I cannot do it, madam. The king has forbidden it." "Ah, you cannot do it. Well then, goodbye. No more sweets for you. I will command everyone in the house to give you nothing." "Oh, madam," said Gourmandine, crying bitterly, "do not be so cruel. Give me some order which it is in my power to execute."
"I command you again to take Princess Blondine near to the Forest of Lilacs."
Furthermore, you must encourage her to step out of the carriage, cross the barrier, and enter the enchanted ground." "But, madam," replied Gourmandine, turning very pale, "if the princess enters this forest, she can never escape from it. You understand the punishment for entering enchanted ground. To send my dear princess there is like to give her up to certain death."
"For the third and last time," said the queen, frowning fearfully, "I ask if you will take the princess to the forest. Choose either an immense box of bonbons, which I will renew every month, or never again to taste the delicacies which you love." "But how shall I escape from the dreadful punishment which His Majesty will impose on me?"
"Don't worry about that. Once you've persuaded Blondine to enter the forest of lilacs, come back to me. I'll ensure you're safely away from danger with your candies, and I'll take responsibility for your future well-being."
"Oh, madam, have pity upon me. Do not compel me to lead my dear princess to destruction, she who has always been so good to me." "You still hesitate, miserable boy? What does Blondine's fate matter to you? When you have obeyed my commands, I will see that you enter the service of Brunette, and I promise you that the candies will never run out."
Gourmandine hesitated and reflected a few moments longer, and unfortunately, at last he decided to sacrifice his good little princess to his gluttony.
The rest of the day he continued to hesitate, and he stayed awake all night crying bitter tears as he trying to find a way to escape from the power of the wicked queen. But he knew that if he refused to carry out her cruel orders, the queen would surely seek bitter revenge, and the hope of rescuing Blondine in the future by seeking the help of a powerful fairy overcame his indecision, compelling him to obey the queen. In the morning at 10 o'clock, Blondine ordered her little carriage and entered it for a drive, after having embraced the king her father and promised him to return in 2 hours. The garden was vast. At the beginning, Gourmandine led the ostriches away from the lilac forest, but once they were out of sight of the palace, he changed direction. He headed for the barrier that separated them from the enchanted ground. He was sad and silent. His crime burdened his heart and conscience. "What is the matter?" said Blondine kindly. "You say nothing. Are you ill, Gourmandine?" "No, my princess, I am well. But how pale you are! Tell me what distresses you, poor boy, and I promise to do all in my power to make you happy."
Blondine's kind inquiries and attentions almost softened Gourmandinette's hardened heart, but the promise of candies from the wicked queen Forbette quickly destroyed his good intentions. Before he had time to reply, the ostriches arrived at the barrier of the forest of lilacs. "Oh, the beautiful lilacs!" Blondine cries. "How fragrant, how delicious! I must have a bouquet of those beautiful flowers for my good papa. Get down, Gourmandinette, and bring me some of those lovely branches."
"I cannot leave my seat, princess. The ostriches might run away with you during my absence." "Do not fear," replied Blondine. "I could guide them myself to the palace." "But the king would be angry with me for leaving you, princess. It is best that you go and pick your own flowers." "That's true. I would hate to get you in trouble, my poor Gourmandine."
As she said these words, she jumped lightly out of the carriage. She crossed the barrier and began to gather the flowers.
At this moment, Gourmandine trembled and was overwhelmed with regrets. He wished to repair his fault by calling Blondine, but although she was only 10 steps from him, although he saw her perfectly, she could not hear his voice, and soon she disappeared into the enchanted forest. For a long time, Gourmandine cried over his crime.
Finally, he remembered that it was almost time at which Blondine would be expected at the palace. He returned to the stables through the back entrance and ran at once to the queen, who was anxiously expecting him. On seeing him so deadly pale and his eyes inflamed from the tears of awful regret, she knew that Blondine had perished. "Is it done?" she said.
Gourmandine bowed his head. He had not the strength to speak. "Come," said she, "behold your reward." She pointed to a large box filled with delicious bonbons of all kinds. She ordered a servant to lift the box and place it on one of the horses. "I give this box to Gourmandine to take to my father," she said. "Go, boy, and come back in a month for another." At the same time, she placed a purse full of gold in his hand. Gourmandine got on the horse in perfect silence and set off at full gallop. The horse was stubborn and unruly, soon becoming agitated under the weight of the box, and began to prance and kick. He did this so effectively that he threw Gourmandine and his precious box of bonbons onto the ground. Gourmandine, who had never ridden upon a horse, fell heavily with his head upon the stones and died instantly. Thus he did not receive from his crime the profit which he had hoped, for he had not even tasted of the bonbons which the queen had given him. No one regretted him. No one but the poor Blondine had ever loved him.